For the past few years, the Pokemon Company has announced their new upcoming games and projects annually on February 27th, National Pokemon Day. It's a day of excitement for many, and dreams crushed for others as we get to take a peek at what new Pokemon games are in development and what new experiences we'll get to take part in later that year. With Pokemon Day 2024 coming up in about a month, I wanted to get the hype cycle circulating and talk about some of the possible game ideas we might see revealed during their presentation. I'm in no way saying any of these are guaranteed to show up, but I do think there's a pretty good chance for some of them, and I'll go through and explain each idea in detail. Kicking things off, the first project I think could be announced is a third DLC pack for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. While this isn't technically a brand new game, I think it's highly possible because of the success of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and its previous DLCs. People have come to really love the Rivals of Paldea, and I think there's a chance that to round out Generation 9, we could see a final DLC pack that sees all the characters come together and interact in a brand new storyline. Throw in a heaping helping of old Pokemon, new Paradox forms, and storyline closure for some of the lingering questions from the Indigo Disc, and I think it could be a decent send-off to this generation. I know some people would rather have a brand new, full-blown game to close out the gen, which I totally understand, but if Game Freak is really slammed on time and resources, I think one more DLC wave could be a possible option we see happen. The next idea gets us into the actual full-fledged games, and I think it's possible we could see a Pokemon Let's Go game based on Generation 2. A Let's Go Johto, if you will. The concept of Let's Go is an interesting idea, and while personally it wasn't my favorite Pokemon game, I do know many people enjoyed it as an entry-level point for the Pokemon franchise. I think in comparison to where modern Pokemon games are at, it would provide more of a classic structure by following what Gold and Silver did while adding in a lot of quality of life improvements and features, as well as an emphasis on catching a ton of Pokemon. I know it's been a few years since the original Let's Go came out, and most assume that style of Pokemon game wouldn't continue, but with Pokemon Go still maintaining a relatively high player base, I think it's definitely a possibility that a Let's Go Johto game could be in the works. It's no secret that there's been a lot of rumors and alleged hints that we're going to get something Generation 5 related to wrap up the Scarlet and Violet era, and I think there are two distinct possibilities we could see happen. The first is a straight remake of Pokemon Black and White that retells the story of Team Plasma invading Unova. Now, would this be more like Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, where it's a very faithful remake and doesn't add too much aside from using 3D assets? Or would this be like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, where the entire game feels a bit more remixed and numerous new things are added? It's really impossible to say at this point, but the pessimist in me is preparing for a rather standard remake of Black and White, even though I'd vastly prefer something like Oros, where the region feels much more fresh and includes a lot of new things. The other Gen 5 related idea, which out of all the ideas in this video is what I personally am hoping for the most, is a Legends Arceus style game set in Unova. A Legends Kyurem, if you will. The beauty of the Scarlet and Violet era is that there's such an emphasis on past versus present, right down to the numerous future and prehistoric Paradox Pokemon that exist. And I think that concept would fit a Legends Unova game to a T! If they wanted to have the game set in the past, we could see the original dragon that eventually split into Zekrom, Reshiram, and Kyurem. The ancient Unova King storyline could be expanded upon, and we could get some really cool past variants of Pokemon. If they wanted to instead do a futuristic Legends game set in a version of Unova in the far future, they could do that as well. Future Paradox forms could be present, the region could have much more of a sci-fi feeling to it, and maybe Team Plasma is back with more of an emphasis on the idea of Genesect and making Pokemon better with technology. I think it's safe to say that a Legends sequel is something that a lot of people would like to see, and I think placing it in either a futuristic or past version of Unova could provide some great opportunities for new Pokemon, cool homages to Gen 5, and a nice way to wrap up this chapter of the Pokemon franchise. And those are some of the games I think could be announced on Pokemon Day to be the 2024 Pokemon game. Not the craziest or most out there of predictions, but I still think they could be interesting, and some kind of Unova Legends game especially would totally be my jam. Which of these games would you personally like to see announced? Maybe you think something else might be announced, or you're from the future and watching this back to see how wrong my predictions were. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.